Thank you for joining me on this week's Homeowners Be Aware podcast. Buying a home is one of the biggest purchases most of us will ever make. So how much do you know about what you're doing? I would venture to guess that most people have more knowledge about a car they are buying or a trip they want to take than they do about houses. Well, my guest today is Rachel Oslund. Rachel has been a home inspector for 17 years. And she's committed to educating home buyers and real estate agents about all the components in a house, how they work together, and how regularly maintaining them helps protect you and your investment. I'm George Siegel, and this is Homeowners Be Aware, the podcast that teaches you everything you need to know about being a homeowner. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Well, thanks for having me. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, no, I love what you're doing because I think it's an area that we don't think enough about. You know, when I think about real estate agents, I think, okay, they're working for the seller, so the buyer is working against both of them. Explain how the relationship should really be working and what is the responsibility of realtors in the whole process of buying homes.
So the realtor that person works for either the seller or the buyer and not for both. And they are the fiduciary for the seller's best interest and the buyer's best interest. But those are two separate transactions, two separate relationships. And the seller's agent, their job is to get them the highest amount of money, whatever the seller wants. Sell it as fast as you can. I don't care how much I get, or the best amount of money or whatever. The buyer's job, the buyer's agent, is to negotiate on behalf of the buyer, to take them to properties, show them. Also, both of those agents need to educate the sets of their clients about what's the norm in the market, what's happening now as opposed to 20 years ago.
Well, it just seems like there's a lot of different forces competing here. So let's just say, for example, I'm selling my house and I hire a person to be my real estate agent, and my house is a disaster. Are they better off passing? When you educate realtors and help them learn more about the whole home process, I know they're obligated to the seller, but then if a lawyer knows their client is a murderer, they're not allowed to go into a court, I think, and say that they're innocent. That's why they never ask.
Right. And so for a seller's agent, they are going to have to handle their client and be very clear to them that whatever's going on with the house. And when you say I don't remember what you said, it was a wreck or it's in bad shape. If
disaster, use the word disaster.
Yeah, disaster. Yes, that fits in with a lot of stuff. If it's a disaster, cosmetically, that's fine. And the agent should tell them, deal with this and clean it up, or get a stager or a declutterer in there. They also, if it's not cosmetic stuff and there's just a ton of things that need to be fixed, then they might suggest that they either get a pre-listing inspection, get it so you know exactly what's going on with the house before you even put it on the market, so you can get things fixed by licensed people, or that's one thing. Or you have to disclose everything that you know that's wrong with it.
Yeah, you would think ethically you do. I know I live in Florida, and there's a form, example for flooding, that a seller can fill out to let the buyer know that the house flooded, but they don't have to give it to the buyer. So my house could have been under 10 feet of water 6 months ago, and I just pass it on to the next person unless they ask me. I mean, that there is a degree of ethics involved here, but I also understand it's a business. So how do you balance that line?
That's a big part of the situation. That's a problem, because you need to ask. The buyer needs to know to ask. The buyer's agent needs to know to ask. And the seller has to disclose these things. In every state, there are different rules. And in Maryland, they need to disclose things that are not that would not be easily just seen on a visual inspection. So say there's polybutylene pipes behind the walls and you don't see any evidence of them, but the seller knows they're there, they need to disclose that.
So when you come in and work with realtors, who are you primarily working with? Tell me how you go about doing what you do.
So for home inspections, usually realtors recommend us to or refer us to their buyers. And so then the buyers will call us, get information, and usually they call a couple of people. The agent refers a couple of inspection companies, and then the buyers come to us. Ultimately, the home inspector is working for the buyer, the person who's paying them, the person who hired them. So if it's a pre-listing inspection, then we are working for the seller. The seller has hired us to come in, give them an objective view so that they can get things fixed.
I've heard good and bad about that, though. It's like, be careful, because once you know it, maybe you're better off not knowing sometimes.
Yep. And it's a risk. I think it depends on who the seller is. So it's really important for the seller to understand themselves, have a little bit of insight about their comfort level with risk. If they're really risk averse and they're not going to be able to sleep until they've got a buyer and the home inspection report in hand from that buyer, then they should just get a pre-listing inspection to have an idea and find whatever there is that's big.
Now, just after COVID, they were selling a lot of houses here in Tampa where people were saying, because they wanted to be the ones that got the house, they were saying, I'll take it without an inspection. I'll waive my inspection. That's a really risky thing to do, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. That you are risky is the same as disaster for a lot of people. If you don't know what's going on with the house, and you don't have the same latitude to get to know the house before you buy it if you waive your inspection. And that was happening here in Maryland too. A lot of people didn't have home inspections for the last couple of years. And then there's buyer's remorse because there are going to be surprises.
Yeah, what I always tell home buyers is, let's stop rewarding other people's mediocrity, because it's really just passing it on. You know, that what's that game? It's like musical chairs, or when we used to toss the grenade to somebody, that game you used to play
Hot
to see who ended up with the hot potato. And it's like, that's what buying a house is like. And if the problem ends up on you, there are some major things you can get stuck with paying.
Oh, yes. Yes. And not just a roof or a leaking basement, or where you don't have basements, but damaged foundation, wet crawl space. It could be there's an underground storage tank with a buried oil tank on the outside of the property that's been there since the 40s, and it could be leaking. And the cleanup for that is huge. And it requires the EPA getting involved. And those are things that you need a professional to tell you about. You just don't, it's not stuff, you just don't look at houses the same way a home inspector does. I am a terrible person to buy a house with. My husband goes through and, oh, this kitchen is beautiful. Everything looks great. And I'm like, looks like they took down some drywall. I wonder if there was mold down here, And so we have these opposite things, but that's what we're trained for. We identify defects for a living,
Yeah, I think you and I would get along great, because I see things that I was buying a house one time, and I told the builder that countertop's not level, and he goes, it's absolutely 100% level. And I said, look, I have an eye for certain things, maybe my only gift in the world, that's not level. So he gets out his level, and it's about 1/4 of an inch off, 1/8 of an inch off. He had to rip it out and put the whole thing in again to level it. So I'm a seller's worst nightmare, but things still get by. I feel like I've gotten screwed every time I've bought a house.
Interesting. And so new construction was that your house with the countertop?
Yes, it was. And I've had a bunch of new construction issues, like the house we're living in now. The day we showed up and I was getting the walkthrough tour, the superintendent told me it was his last day on the job.
Mm.
I don't think you ever want to hear that.
No.
Because I knew we were the things that he rushed on are things we've had problems with. Like, he rushed to have him put the garage door in. We've had problems with that. He put brackets in for shelves upside down where we were going to hang things in the garage. I mean, the guy was a knucklehead. So my point is, that's why I try to teach people with my podcast. You really need to be 100% on your game, because even if you think you know things, you miss things.
Yes, because there's an emotional attachment to the house that's there for you and for me, even though we both have really, really trained eyes for seeing stuff like that. And the purchase of new construction is rising because of the limited inventory of existing homes. Is that the way it is in Tampa too?
Absolutely. It's slowed down a little bit, but houses have skyrocketed here. tearing down old houses and building new ones, and the price of the lot has gone up double, sometimes triple. It's insane what's happening.
And the same is happening here. And I think it's a trend across the country right now. And people don't think they need home inspection with new construction. And that is, we work with several builders in the area, and it's a fine line for the buyer. And you know this because you've done it. You have a long-term relationship with this builder. So you want to make sure that it stays professional, and you want to be comfortable going to them with questions and problems, and you need to hold them to account for whatever's not right. And the first one I did was 2006. And the buyer didn't want a home inspection. He didn't want to pay for it. His agent said, you've got to get a home inspection. It's new construction. You just never know. There are subcontractors, whatever. I filled up the jetted tub, and as it was draining in the primary bathroom upstairs, draining down onto the the recessed lighting in the living room, down onto the fireplace, down onto the electric panel in the basement. Now, if we hadn't done that, their first night there, they'd have had the kids in that giant bathtub playing around and had a mess downstairs on their new furniture that they bought to put in there. And there were missing shingles and no liner in the wood burning fireplace. Like, there were hazards there that were beyond just water coming through the ceiling. Like, they're really big problems.
Yeah, there's a couple.
Not usually the builder trying to pull something over, but just subcontractors, humans.
Right. And I think that a house build is only as good as the person on the job supervising the people there, watching them and being on their game. And I think people buying the house have to be there a lot. I have a couple of inspectors in my Instagram feed. I've had them on the podcast that show videos all the time. And you just shake your head going, how did they not vent the fireplace, have it go to a chimney? It's just going into the attic. How did this stove not do this? How is this not wired right? People make mistakes, and they make a lot of mistakes. I think an inspection, and you lose your clout once you've closed and that sale is completed.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And you're right about that. And that is, you've lost all of your power then, and you've got your 11-month warranty inspection, or warranty is up. And so have an inspection then, because you start to notice things and live with them and forget about them as you live there as things go wrong. But you can do whatever you want. And there are things that are going to happen with people who make mistakes. And like your guy leaving the superintendent, it's his last day. He doesn't care. And no one's going to hold him to account later, call him at his next job. And that's yes. Yes. And we did a 55 plus community. And it's like the first couple people had us come in and inspect, and we found very specific things wrong. And by the fourth house, there were no problems at all, because the builder was able to stop or fix or stop in the tracks what the contractors were missing. A lot of times they forget to connect the dishwasher. So we run that, and then water's pouring out on the floor.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's sloppy work. I've never worked with a builder in a personal level building a house where I've ended up liking them at all when the job is done. I have some friends that are builders that I know do a great job. And I read about great builders all the time that are building resilient houses. They're building houses that can survive fires, floods, all kinds of things. I haven't had the good fortune of working with them. So how do we level the playing field so the person buying the house is in a better position than we seem to end up in most of the time?
The buyer's got to be educated. This isn't like when you're renting, and it goes especially for first-time home buyers and first-generation home buyers, because there's less experience with home maintenance and all the things that go along with owning a house that you just a lot of times just don't think about. And so there's an education piece that needs to be there. And there are certain grant programs across the country for funding where people get training in home ownership, but you have to be getting a grant to do that. And every grant has its own requirements. And most real estate agents just don't have any understanding of how houses work until they've been doing it for a while. You have to have a lot of transactions under your belt, have attended a lot of home inspections to understand it. So the buyer really has to be on their game. But then what do you trust on YouTube? It's people like you, or, what podcasts do you listen to? You can't just listen to anything and trust everything.
I don't trust anybody. I mean, I know that sounds really bad. I mean, there's certain people that if I get to know them, I sort of trust them. But if they're an official, if they're in the government, if there's somebody that's in a position of power, I just assume they're always out for themselves and not necessarily looking after my best interest. And what amazes me is most people, their house is their biggest investment. They probably do more research about the car that they're buying on Edmunds and Auto Trader and Consumer Reports, whoever they're reading that information from. But when they buy a house, they go, oh, that's so beautiful. It's near the school and there's a park nearby. And that's all they think about.
Yes. And so what's so powerful is what you're doing and educating people that there's more to look at. And I've said the same thing. I like the car analogy. I say you buy shoes and you find the ones that have all these things that you like and know about them. Same thing. You're doing so much research on them and you know a lot about them. You buy them, you take care of them. Same thing with the house. And with new construction, it's like prenatal care when you're pregnant. You've got to go to the property. You've got to go there and check it out as they're working on it. You've got to hold them to account. And that's what inspectors do. But you've got to know to do that. And buyers have to have they have to know that there's stuff they don't know, and that they need someone to be their guide.
Well, with houses having gotten so expensive, I think what happens too is people are squeezing into something that maybe they can't fully afford. So when you say, okay, look, maybe another $1,000 worth of inspections would be a good thing, because then you would truly be in a much better position once you close on that property. But they don't want to spend the money. It's like the landscaping at the end of a deal. The builder landscaping package. My wife and I always laugh at this: 2 bushes and a patch of grass, and you're on your own, and you can walk around the neighborhood and see who took that package. I just don't understand why we're not more on top of this.
It's dollars and cents. It is absolutely. Buyers have an understanding, most buyers, that a home inspection should just be a couple $100s. And when if you were buying an airplane, a little airplane, you would have it inspected and it would be a couple $1,000s for the inspection. And that's you, and you're not in there all the time, but you're flying. You want this thing to be fine. You bring yourself, your partner, your pets, your family into this house, and you're getting an inspection. And I've done inspections for people, and it's $1 million property, and they're like, ooh, $500? Can you get it lower? Well, what do you want us to skip? I mean, it's a priceless inspection to have someone else who's not attached to the house emotionally come in and tell you what's going on and give you an objective list of what's there. So I don't know, there's got to be a balance of people understanding that there's value in the home inspection beyond checking a box.
Well, I think even too, before you get to the inspection, people should be doing more research into the person they're buying the house from, or the history of the neighborhood, or the history of the community. And don't just go to the builder's references. Go to the people that may own one of those houses that he didn't tell you about.
Yes.
Because that's where you get the most information.
Yes, those neighbors who have already moved in are really fantastic resource. Definitely. Go ahead.
Yeah, and one of the other things too, which is we care more about the icing on the cake than the ingredients. And you really need to know. I mean, there's so many things that are important in a house being resilient, in terms of how that house was built safety wise. And most builders don't put that out front. But everybody should ask that question of anybody, even if it's just somebody selling a house. What are the features in your house that make it safe?
Yes. And when you had work done on the house, did you pull permits? And did you have those permits closed? Was there a final inspection? Because people will pull permits, but not actually have that final inspection. And that at least gives you some sense of security. It's government, so you never you never know exactly, but at least there's something there. And the other thing that buyers can do is get a clue report from their insurance company to see what claims have been filed on that property. So that would be helpful in finding out about if there'd been flooding. It makes no sense to me that in Florida, you've got to disclose or fill out the form saying that you had a flood in your house, but you don't have to give it to anybody unless they ask.
Yeah. So if my house flooded and I didn't go through insurance to fix it, it's not going to show up on that clue report, is it? It's like a Carfax report.
Yep. Yep.
So I was told there's little clues you can use to maybe look around the house and see if water ever intruded there, if there's a basement, or maybe you bring one of those thermal cameras and you can see if there's moisture in the walls. I mean, are there things you can do to try to sleuth that out?
Those are all great suggestions. One of the things I'll just start with, first of all, in the basement, using an thermal imaging camera, is that's looking for differences in temperature. So it doesn't tell you if there's water there or mold there, which is a misconception that a lot of clients of mine have had. It's showing you a difference in temperature. And of course, the drywall or concrete in the basement wall or the crawl space is going to be cooler where the water is, where it's wet, than where it's dry. So scanning those walls with an infrared camera. Another one is to look around the basement walkout door and look for water there, evidence of water, staining at the baseboards, staining around the door frame. If you've got a basement, that walkout should be clear. There shouldn't be leaves. You don't have this in Tampa, I know, because my daughters are sending me pictures of the palm trees and I'm sending them the crunchy leaves from Maryland right now. But you don't have piles of leaves filling up drains. You've got to clear that away from the basement walkout door so that the drains stay clear. Going around the basement, if you've got concrete, and I'm imagining where you are with no basement, there's it's harder to see this, but you're looking for evidence of water. So uneven lines of staining or even sparkly white stuff around the perimeter at the base of the wall. That's efflorescence, the minerals left after the water evaporates. So that's there. Those are clues right away.
Yeah, and you also have to know, I mean, I've heard stories of people that live in a community where they never thought it would flood, but because they built up a community next to them, all the water that used to go into the ground there now runs off into their neighborhood, and now people have to deal with flooding.
Yeah, it's a big deal to look at the historic water situation in an area where you're moving, especially if it's a place you've never lived. If I were moving to Tampa from Baltimore, I would really have to do some different research. Another thing to notice in some areas is if you're looking at a neighborhood and it's got street names like Running Brook East, Running Brook West, those are signs that there may be an underground spring or that there was a brook there at one time. So you can look at a map and see, okay, these are all named something that has something to do with water. And then that can be a sign that there's something going on under your house, and or they rerouted something, or they had to suppress something, and it may come back. So you want to just be hyper vigilant in that way.
Wow, I haven't heard that one. That's interesting. Now, has it created an industry for you? So many people are becoming realtors now because they want to make extra money. They want to do it on the side. There's the high-powered agents in a community, and then there's all the other people that are scrambling to try to get listings and do everything. That probably is good for what you do because it opens up a whole bunch of people you can educate.
It really does. And over the last couple of years, because there have been fewer home inspections, what I created was this real estate education series. And so that was to train new agents and experienced agents in all different aspects of homes and home inspections. But so many people come in trying to do it on the weekend or the evening, and some are fantastic and they just absorb information and they're seeking out training. And then others are not. Others are hoping, because these last couple of years told people that they could just get in, make some money, and be done. Because there was no negotiating. There was none of that. Not as much was necessary over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like education in that. So, how do people take that course? How do people get involved with you and get be part of that?
So just going to my website under the agent resources, there's a section there, or they can email or text me and I'll connect them. It's on Zoom.
That's
And then,
excellent.
and the other one that I do that's in person is a mock home inspection. So I meet with a group of people at a house and we walk through and talk about the drainage and what I'm seeing and the downspouts and the soffits and holes in the soffit and how they connect to the ridge vent at the top of the roof and all of those things, and grading and all the parts of the roof and the types of shingles, and then go through the inside to see how it all corresponds to what we saw on the outside. And that's an interesting thing, and it's done in person. And someone in California asked me if I would please just record one entirely and send it so they could watch it. So I'm working on that.
Now, are you talking more to agents with that, or potential home buyers? Because I would think that anybody buying a home should be armed with that knowledge too.
Yes, 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 yes. Thank you. And many times, yes. I offer it for buyers and I offer it for agents. And it's agents who seem to be coming more. I don't have as direct a link to buyers as I'd like to get them the education. Because if your agent doesn't know and you don't know, it's a challenge you may lose out on a house and you may get into a house. I say lipstick on a pig, you may notice, but lipstick on a pig with polio, you're not going to see that. You got to be looking at stuff differently.
Should people do a better job vetting the person that they're using as a real estate agent? I know a lot of times you end up hiring the person who's sending you flyers all the time or who seems to sell a lot of houses in the neighborhood, but you never really understand whether they have the kind of knowledge you're talking about.
Right. And so I would say when you're interviewing an agent, doing a lot of houses in your neighborhood is a good thing because they know the construction and they know the area. But someone who's listed a lot of houses and sold them may not have had any experience, especially if they've got a big team behind them. They might not actually have the experience themselves and know when to ask for help from the rest of their team. So you want them to be able to walk through the house and point things out to you. If you have someone there as your listing agent, then we're talking about two separate people here, but for the listing agent, you want them to walk through and be able to identify the parts of the house and understand as you're pointing things out, they should also be looking at it differently beyond just cosmetic. Most don't do that, which is what I'm trying to teach. And then for buyers, you want to ask your agent, tell me about what you know about houses. And they'll say, well, I know all about them. I know 2.5 baths or 1 bath. And I work with a ton of really fantastic agents who know a lot of stuff about houses. And then I work with some terrible ones who are just, I had one who just said to me, so when are we going to look at the foundation? Well, we just walked out of the basement and that's the foundation. That's where we just were. Oh, can we go back and you show me that? So it's asking them, and anyone can reach out to me and I am happy to answer questions or help them develop some questions. But I haven't come up with a script for how to interview an agent, because you also have to be comfortable with them because it's a pretty intimate experience.
It is. And, it's one of those things where still every experience I've come away with there, I only blame myself if things screw up, because ultimately we could have investigated or found things out too. Like we bought our house here in Tampa because it was on this beautiful tree-lined street with all this shade because it gets really hot here. When we moved down here, they had cut down all the trees between when we had closed and when we got here because they were putting in a new sewer project right down the street. And so they had to cut down all the trees that made it a tree-lined street. Now, some would argue that's a good thing because now the street drains better, but our agent didn't tell us about it. I think people need to make that call to the city, find out if there's any projects going on there. What's the master plan for that community? They're now putting power lines underground here, which means transformers in people's yards. You got to ask questions if it's your investment.
Yeah. And you learned that the hard way. And that is something that the agent may or may not have known that. And the agent should be encouraging you to do your due diligence. Maryland is a caveat emptor state, buyer beware state. So here, you've got to do your due diligence, look those things up. And you want your agent to be able to have knowledge about the area that you're in. You can't use, I say you can't. I've said that twice in here. Do whatever you want. And if you use an agent who is from, I don't know, if you used an agent from Orlando to come sell you this house in Tampa because it's your cousin's sister or whatever, then they're not going to know that area. And you want someone who is an expert in the spot that they're selling.
Yeah, I think in my case, it's because I only learn lessons the hard way. There's no easy way. So if you had to give people advice and say, okay, here's the number one thing, whether you're a seller or a buyer, what's something people can focus on so we can walk away making a difference here?
Ask questions. And if you're not sure what questions to ask, so you're just going to silently listen and hope for the best, you're going to have problems. So ask questions. Google what questions should I ask, because every area is different. And don't take this as a passive thing. You got your credit all set. You got the loan. You actually are all set. You get to look at houses. That's not the end. The end is taking responsibility for knowing about the house and knowing about home ownership.
Yeah, I have questions. I put them on my website for questions every buyer should ask a seller before they buy a house. Just a list of questions. And my response to people always is, I don't want to be a bother. If they weed you out because you want information, they're doing you a favor. Walk away and buy something else.
Yep. You are spot on. No matter how much you love that house, if the seller doesn't want to respond, give you answers, that's a red flag.
Yeah, there's red flags all the time. And I think we just don't want to see them sometimes because you want them to like you. Your spouse falls in love with it. But sometimes you got to make the tough decisions. It's not fun when you're writing checks for stuff down the road because they did a crappy job.
Exactly. And your buyer's agent as a buyer, you've got to really make sure that your buyer's agent they can be friendly and wonderful and then also a pit bull at the same time, because they've got to go to bat for you. So you've got to have someone that's going to be able to negotiate and get questions answered that you want answered that you can't get answered. Like they've got to do that for you. And if they are rushing you, that's a red flag. People who don't do many home inspections, don't do many transactions, are generally trying to sell quickly because they've got to pay for something. I've got to get this commission. My kid needs shoes, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, that's not a good situation because then you're the one that's going to end up paying for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I should write a book about that.
Oh, totally. Oh my gosh. You've got your website's fantastic. And what you're doing with educating people about the resilient homes and everything that you're doing is fantastic. So I loved going through all of your social media, your Facebook and Instagram, looking at everything. And your website, of course, has a ton of great information.
Well, thank you for saying that. And that's what I was attracted to having you on, because of what you do. I think it's filling such an important, this is like a love fest here, but this is such an important thing to educate people. We need to wake people up, period.
Yes, because home ownership is the American dream. I should do this, air quotes, the American dream, or at least that's what we've been sold. So, and you want your own space, don't rush into it and don't just ask questions. And so this is just, and if I can help realtors understand more about houses so that they can help buyers and sellers actually be better homeowners, then I will feel much better, like I've made a difference, because then they know how to take care of the house. And then when they go to sell it, it'll be worth more too.
Absolutely. Let's stop passing along problems and just, have it landing on somebody else.
Oh.
We're speaking the same language. Rachel, yes. I'm going to put all your contact information in the show notes. And I really appreciate your time today. Great information.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening today. I'd love to learn about your stories as a homeowner. There's a contact form in the show notes. Fill it out and share your experiences, good or bad. You could be featured on an upcoming episode. And if you enjoyed what you were listening to today, please become a regular subscriber so you don't miss an episode. A new podcast comes out every Tuesday. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.